Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to, according to my calculation, 27th session of Discovering Islam. Uh, we had started talking about ibadat, and the first of the four ibadat prescribed by the Almighty in His religion to us. Salat, we've already done. I'm not saying that all questions about Salat have been covered and answered, but as much as my knowledge allowed me, I've talked about most of the questions that arise in one's mind regarding Salat. Now we move on to Zakat. Before I start talking about Zakat, which probably I'm not going to talk about today, let me mention a few initial um, thoughts regarding Zakat. One question that somebody who reads the Quran normally, regularly, cannot miss is the fact that the Quran mentions Salat and Zakat together very frequently. It seems that the Almighty's expectation from a believer is that he should say his prayers regularly and he should give zakat regularly. If you do it, it seems that the Quran is telling us that you are a Muslim. Uh, Particularly, it's prominent when you look at Surah At-Tawbah. Now, I've talked about Surah At-Tawbah. It's a surah of the Almighty's punishment. The punishment to the people who were presented with the message of the Almighty so very clearly that they had no justifiable reason to not believe. So, when it came to a point when there was no excuse left for them, which is what we describe as itmamul hujjah, they became eligible to be punished and killed. Now, what could have been the point of line of demarcation that could be drawn between a Muslim and a kafir? All Muslims then were kafirs. Sadly, what many Muslims still believe, and I'm trying to convince them that's not the case. But at that time, whoever was a non-Muslim was a kafir. And the demarcation line was, the distinguishing feature was that a Muslim was the one who said his prayers regularly and paid zakat. And somebody who didn't do it was not a Muslim and therefore then was a kafir. Uh, so therefore, if somebody wanted to spare himself from punishment, well, had to say his prayers and to pay zakat, and there were many hypocrites who actually did it. So, for instance, in verse 5 of Surah Tawbah, the Almighty says, فَإِذَنْ سَلَخَ الْأَشْهُرُ الْحُرُمُ. When these sacred months go by, they elapse, فَقْتُلُ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. That you kill these polytheists wherever you find them. And then goes on to say, however, فَإِن تَابُوا, if they repent, وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةِ, and they establish prayers, وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ, and they give zakat, فَخَلُّوا سَبِيلًا, then leave them. Do not stop them from their way. Allow them to go. And a few verses later, in verse 11, the Almighty says, if they say their prayers and they pay zakat, فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ, then they are your brothers in your religion. So, I've not answered the question. I'm telling you that this is what is mentioned over and over again. Why? Now, it seems that the reason is, but before I answer the reason, I should clarify that it's a valid, legitimate question. Why? Because when you read the Quran, you should not understand what is expected out of you as a believer. You should also understand why. Because this is what the Almighty continues to encourage us to do tadabbur, to reflect, to understand. So, because otherwise, okay, I mean, otherwise you still be a believer, a good believer. You will be an obedient believer. But, we should not remain satisfied at that point only. We should dig deeper. because we know that the Almighty is wise. It doesn't require anyone to do anything for no reason. So the question is why? Why is it that in order for you to be known, acknowledged as a believer, the minimum requirements are that you say your prayers regularly and you pay zakat? The answer seems to be that in order for you to be a true believer, in order for you to follow the religion of the Almighty, you have to do essentially two things. If you do them, the two of them properly, you've done your job. A, have the right kind of relationship with your creator. And B, have the right relationship with your fellow human being. Having done both, you've done your job. To establish the right kind of relationship with your creator, we have seen it in the last two sessions. You have to say your salat quite as properly as you can. And we keep learning, we keep understanding, we keep improving our prayers. In order to have the right kind of relationship with fellow humans, you have to do infaq. Now, I'll explain what it is. The subset of infaq is zakat. So, if you say you have to pay zakat, that essentially is covering the same point. So, the reason the two come together is because they are a summarized version of Islam. I mean, that's what the Almighty expects from us. Be good to me, your creator, and be good to your fellow humans. And you've done your job. The second point, you know, salat 5 times a day, the minimum obligatory prayers are a requirement from all believers. But the real requirement is that we remember Allah. So the Quran says, Uzkurullaha zikran kathira. Remember your God in abundance, as much as is possible, as frequently as is possible. But how much? Now that is how the Almighty has presented his religious guidance. He wants you to do as best as you can. You're living a life of a trial, and here is an opportunity for you to do as best as you can. However, there is a minimum expectation which if you don't satisfy, then you're doing something wrong, then you are going to be categorized as a sinner because you're not meeting the minimum requirements. So while the expectation is to remember Allah as frequently as possible all throughout, but that doesn't really mean that you keep saying Allah, subhanallah. What it means is that you thank him, you see what he's done for you around, you think about him, you think about his people and so on. You read his book. Likewise, the expectation from the believer is that he should do infaq. He should spend from his wealth on the poor, as well as for the promotion of the cause of the Almighty's message. How much? As much as is possible. Sky is the limit. Don't put yourself into unnecessary difficulty. That's obviously quite understandable, but do it as much as you can. But what is the minimum limit? Zakat. So you pay zakat and you have done the minimum that was expected out of you in the domain of infaq. So what I'm saying is that the primary expectation of the Almighty from his servants, from his believers, is that they should remember him as much as is possible. They should spend in his way as much as they can manage. But he has given us the minimum expectations in the form of salat and zakat. Right. Having mentioned these 2 points, the next question is, why infaq? I mean, why at all? And I would keep saying, these are all legitimate questions. Don't put off, snub somebody who's asking these questions. These are legitimate questions because the Almighty has given us mind, intellect. which keeps asking questions, and it keeps understanding, reading the Almighty's book to find out why. When we read the Quran and we read the different messages of the Quran to understand why He expects us to spend in His way, there are certain aspects of the design of this life that He Himself has mentioned, which, when we understand and put them together, we get the idea. We get the reason why He expects us to do in part, to spend in His way. I tried to put them in a decent order, but I'm sure I failed. So bear with me. I'm mentioning to you the items one by one, not necessarily in a very impressive order. But the first thing is, sure, the first point is that this life is a trial. It's a test. It's neither a reward for somebody's good efforts nor a punishment for somebody's evil performance. It's a trial from A to Z. If somebody is not understanding this point, he's in serious trouble because he doesn't understand life the way it has been designed by the Creator. And all this while, all the while that he's going to live in this world, he's going to wonder what's going on, why this, why that. So the Almighty clarifies over and over again that this life is a trial from A to Z. Probably the most prominent passage in the Quran which mentions it is in Surah Al-Mulk, verse 2. He says, خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ. He created death and life. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, so that He should test you. أَيُّكُمْ, who amongst you, أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, would do good deeds. So this life is a trial, and therefore, there is a reason why He's mentioned death first. People are not going to take this test seriously unless they are reminded, mind you, it's around the corner. You're about to go. So take it seriously. So it's a trial. That's first point. The next one is that God, our creator, has no limits in his resources. His resources are endless. His ability has no bounds. He can do anything. He can come up with any amount of resources that are needed by whoever he has created. Uh, the Quran mentions it over and over again. He is vasa. His ability, potential is immense, unlimited. Vaseun alim, and he's knowledgeable. He knows who needs what. So, he has created humans. Humans are, in many cases, in trouble, in difficulty, and he knows it. And he has the resources. There is no dearth of resources as far as the Almighty is concerned. He can do anything. So, what is the answer to this puzzle? Why is there suffering? Please refer to the earlier point. This life is a trial. So, but let's not forget that as far as he himself is concerned, his resources are endless and he knows who is needing what. In order for him to solve the problem of deprivation, instead of him providing directly, which was no problem for him. I mean, as I said, there's no limit. There's no, there's dearth of resources as far as he's concerned. But what he did was that he gave some people more and others less than what they needed. Allahu yabsutur rizqa liman yasha. Allah expands provisions for whom He wills beyond the needs. وَيَقْدِرْ, and He restricts provisions for others. That's what He has done. Why? Because this life is a trial. It could not have been a place of trial had there not been reasons, occasions, circumstances that would have necessitated that humans be tested. So, one important way is making all of us go through this trial of life is that He has caused our provisions to either be more than what we need, or in other cases, less than what people need. But in both cases, whether you're rich beyond your needs or whether you're poor, it's only a trial. In either case, you're being tested. You're neither successful if you're rich, nor you are a failure if you're poor. So the Quran says in Surah Al-Fajr, Ammal insan, and as for this man means the people who were there at the time when this surah, the Quran was being revealed, people of Mecca and other places. Is it a general principle? Well, I can't say for sure, but it's actually talking about circumstances in which this verse and this passage was revealed. As for this man, إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ, when his Lord tests him, فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَمَ, and gives him a position of respect and provides him with blessings. فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ, he says, my Lord has given me respect, a position of respect. I'm privileged. وَأَمَّا, however, إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ, when he tests him, فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقًا, and he restricts provisions for him. فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَ, he says, my Lord has caused me to be disrespected. Uh, I'm gone. I'm a failure. Kalla, certainly not. Neither in the first case, the person is privileged and successful, nor in the second case, the person is doomed or is a failure. In both cases, it's just a test. And the Quran goes on in the surah later to lament the reality, the fact that the people of Mecca, the rich people of Mecca, are not taking care of the poor. Okay. Then the Quran mentions in Surah Bani Israel, the 17th Surah, in verse 26, and says that your poor relatives, the poor people of in your society, those who are needy, give them their right. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ وَالْمِسْكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. Give them their right. It's their haqq. You have a portion in your wealth which is not for you. It's for them. Had Allah wanted, He could have given it to them directly. But He wanted to test you as well as them. He wanted to test you as to how much grateful you are and how you are showing your gratefulness to the Almighty by sharing your wealth with others who need, and without being arrogant. And He is testing those who have been given less than what they need, and is testing their patience, perseverance. Are they still thanking their Creator, or they have given up? So it's a test in both cases. Which one is more tough? Well, it's anybody's guess. Most people think that the test of the poor is tougher than the test of the rich. But those who really know the Almighty scheme, they're kind of unanimous that the test of the rich people is much more tough, much more difficult. And it's going to come to the accountability process. People would realize, oh my goodness, it would have been far better had we not had the kind of wealth that we have. So it's a test. And I tell you, okay, there are questions. Some people say that, When you make such statements, you're actually encouraging people to not work. I'm not saying that. Do as best as you can, and yet the disparity is going to remain. And for the people who remain deprived or poor, they don't have to be depressed. Just a test. They should try their best, but should be content with the reality that the Almighty is testing them. And if they are living up to the expectations of the Almighty as far as their conduct is concerned and showing patience, perseverance, they are doing the right job and they are successful. Now, if in my wealth, which is more than my needs, there is a portion which has been specified, earmarked for others, then you know what? I cannot overspend. I can't be extravagant. So, therefore, in the same verse where the Almighty says that give your poor relatives their share, their due uh, amount, portion, and the poor and the wayfarer, wala tubazzir tabzira, and do not spend extravagantly. Don't overspend. What is the definition? Is not given. He has left it to you to think, to understand, to feel, and to respond as best as you can. Had he specified everything, it really would have been very difficult test. It would have made things very uh, constrained for everybody. And we would not have had any way to find out who is doing better than others. It would have been all kind of mechanical. I have to do it. I have to do that. So, quite apart from the minimum requirement of zakat, he has left it to the discretion of individuals to decide on the basis of their own, you know, inclination towards goodness, the the impulse of goodness that we all have as humans, to decide that no, I can't go for this kind of an expenditure because there are so many poor people. I have relatives who are poor, and I've got to spend on them as well. So that's another aspect which the Almighty mentions. Innal mubazzirina kanu ikhwan ash-shayatin. So the Almighty says, do not spend extravagantly. Indeed, those who spend extravagantly are the brothers of shaitan. Wakana shaitanu lirabbihi kafura. And shaitan is ungrateful to his Lord. So, you know, in other passages, the Almighty says that his good people, Ibadur Rahman, Iza anfaqu, when they spend, lam yusrifu wa lam yaqturu. They neither go beyond limits nor are they niggardly. Wakana baina zalika awam. They spend and adopt the middle path. That is the most outstanding performance that the Almighty expects. He does not want us not to spend for our own needs. He doesn't want us to not spend a good life. But we've got to be balanced. We've got to take care of others. And obviously, it's always going to be debatable. And it seems Allah wants it to be debatable so that we continue to debate, find out, probe, discuss, and do as best as we can. Uh, and as I said, this is the best way to be balanced. Quite often, people talk about the fact that the Prophet ﷺ adopted a way wherein he didn't spend on himself very little. And that's the ideal. Well, the Quran is the ideal. And the Prophet ﷺ, some part of his life, adopted that policy because there was a need for it. There was an occasion when the people who migrated from Medina and who were with him, dependent on him, were so deprived that he did not find it acceptable for himself to lead a life wherein he was he was having a level of consumption which was better than the minimum. But we know that prophets like Dawood and Sulaiman alayhi salam were kings. So, having a good life is not something which is unacceptable or even lower than the Almighty's expectations of the highest level. There is this supplication, dua of the Prophet ﷺ, wherein he asked the Almighty to enable him to adopt the middle path, whether he was rich or poor, whether in circumstances where he was having economically good conditions, or whether he was in circumstances where his conditions were, restricted and constrained. It is the middle path. This is one of the problems of many of us Muslims in understanding Allah's religion, that they don't base their understanding on the teachings of the Quran. They look at incidents, they look at stories. Stories and incidents have to be understood in the light of the Quran and not the other way around. Or else you will have an understanding of Islam, which is not going to be the understanding which the Almighty has presented for people to be guided by. So, extravagant spendings have been criticized by the Almighty. And the reason is that if you are going to spend beyond a certain limit, you will be spending in the scheme of the Almighty the wealth that He gave you to spend on them, the poor people. And you're spending it on yourself. Why? Well, just to show off, but just to prove that you're rich, just to look good. That is something which is not acceptable. Okay. It is therefore, and as I promised, I'm not going to be very good at properly sequencing. So, another point. It is therefore that the Almighty says that, when you earn, when you do your job, when you have a business, you have an industry, you go for agriculture or whatever, you're not earning. You're not earning. You are searching for the bounties of the Almighty. And that is what He says in the Quran over and over again. In Surah Al-Jum'ah, for instance, that when the prayer is over, فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, spread across over the land. وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ, and search for Allah's fazl, His bounties. So, I mean, this is revolutionary. When you are doing something to earn, according to your understanding, you're actually not earning. You are looking for the Almighty's fazl, His bounty that He has arranged for you so that you look for it. So, in order for anybody to be able to earn, in the sense that we use this expression for, there are two conditions that need to be met. One is that the Almighty's bounty should be there, and the other, we should find it out. We should look for it. If the two converge, you will earn, you will make wealth. If one of the two is missing, you'll not get anything, or you will get very little. So the Almighty has arranged for you His bounty in the form of earning, but you're not making effort in the right direction. You'll not get it. And if you are making efforts, but in the area where the bounties are not arranged for you, again, you'll not get it. So, let's keep trying. And this is my hunch. I think the Almighty's bounties are available to different people in different professions, different areas. And probably those professions and areas are the one for which He has given you the acumen, the interest, the inclination, the passion for. And what you get in return, don't ever think that you've earned. It's the Almighty's bounty that you have been able to find. And therefore, it has to be spent in the right manner. That is why the Almighty says that, when you are asked to spend in His way, what He says is that these are the people who mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun, and from the rizq, sustenance that we have given them, they spend. So, I mean, you have been asked to spend from what he has given you. What have you done? Well, you just looked for it. Had it not been there, you wouldn't have gotten anything. So that's what the understanding, what the idea is. Now, because this is what it is, that's for the scheme of the Almighty. Therefore, when you're spending, when you're spending, what is happening is, I think the Western society has adopted a different way, and fine. I mean, it makes sense that you have got organizations which get donations, and then you spend according to a certain plan, which is great. Uh, but the way it takes in other parts of the world, you know, Pakistan and other areas, Muslim countries, in most cases, people spend directly. They they know poor relative, poor person, and they spend. Now, in comes the all important attitude of yours. If you are aware of the fact that you're spending and you're not you're not doing any favor on anyone, then you will do it in that spirit. But if that spirit is not there, so the Quran says in that case, believers, la tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal aza. Don't destroy, nullify, negate what you are spending bil manni wal aza, either by making the person aware of the fact that you are conferring your favor upon him, man or aza, or by making statements that are hurtful. You know, because you think that you are favoring him, and therefore that man should salute you. He should do things that you expect him to do, respect you exaggeratingly. Well, if you're going to do it, well, the Quran says, "Tubtilu sadaqat." Your spending is going to be destroyed, will be made batil. You'll not get anything out of it. Why? Because you've not even understood the spirit of it. You could have been in his position and he could have been in your position. It's all a test, it's all a trial and nothing else. So, la tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal adha. Kallazi yunfiqu malahu riya nas. Wow. Don't do it like somebody who spends his wealth riya nas to show off to people. I mean, you can always, spend and have a photo session. I'm not saying photo sessions are wrong always, because sometimes you need them to motivate others. But if the entire motivation is that people should come to learn about the fact that this man is, he's amazing. He does charity so much. Riyan Nas. The one who does Riyan Nas, who shows off, the Quran says, Wala yuminu billahi wala bil yawm. He doesn't believe in Allah nor hereafter. No matter how much you might say, I believe in Allah, but if your conduct is such that you are doing good deeds only to let others know that you're a great man, you're a pious person, then it's all going to be destroyed. So that's what the Quran is saying. Now, the Quran says that when you spend your wealth uh, in the right manner, uh, there should be two different motivations. One is ibtigha'a mardatillah, to seek the pleasure of the Almighty. You're spending and you are asking the Almighty to be pleased with what you're doing. He gave you this responsibility and you are discharging this responsibility on his behalf. So you want him to be, to be pleased with you. And the other thing is very, very interesting, which the Quran mentions. But tathbitam min anfusihim. And spend your wealth in the way of Allah to get your nafs, nufus, soul, get stronger against shaitan, against evil. So, you're spending in the way of Allah and you're asking the Almighty to be pleased with you and also to enable you to be able to overcome the attacks that the evil forces, shayateen, do on you. So that's also a motivation that should be there at the back of one's mind as and when we are spending in the way of Allah. Uh, and it's very kind of the Almighty that He says that, when you spend in the way of Allah, in His way, you are giving Him a loan. Wow. In tuqridullah qardan hasana. If you give loan, qard to the Almighty, a good loan. A good loan means a loan s- given, spent with the right motivation, right intentions, and good wealth, good quality stuff. Uh, he says, فَيُضَاعِفْهُ lakum. He's going to multiply for you, reward you many times more. وَيَغْفِرْ lakum. And he's going to forgive your sins. The same thing that is mentioned elsewhere. Uh, Seek the Almighty's assistance for your nafs to become stronger against evil, and whatever evil has already been done, seek His forgiveness. And He's going to forgive you. Wallahu shakurun halim. Allah is shakur. He values good deeds which people do in the right way, and He's forbearing. So the idea is that if He's forbearing, you be forbearing as well. I mean, people you help, it's not that they're going to behave in a way always that's going to be up to your expectation. They might say things, do things which you may not like. Forgive them. Why? Because Allah is forbearing. I mean, He forgives you. I mean, don't you want to be forgiven? So if you want to be forgiven, forgive them. Do not adopt an attitude which is stern. I know people say that, you are going to be so polite and relaxed with them, they're going to take advantage of it. Well, let's again adopt a middle way. Yes, we want discipline, but we don't want our good deeds to be destroyed by a behavior which is arrogant, rude, and your sadaqat are batilofied, are destroyed. Don't allow it to happen. So that is what the Quranic scheme is. So what I was saying was that the Quran tells us that we should spend in the way of Allah. We do infaq, and zakat is the minimum of spending. And there is a reason, there is a philosophy behind why we should spend in the way of Allah. And I just mentioned a few points from the Quran which would give us a reason to understand why it is expected of us. Finally, I'll just mention, just translate a few verses from the Quran describing the story of one of those people who did not understand this philosophy. And it's a typical mentality of arrogant rich man that has been depicted in the story of Qarun. Korah is a biblical English name. Inna Qaruna kana min qawmi Musa. The Quran says Qarun was from the nation of Musa. Fabaga alayhim, and he went against him. He was tyrannical, tyrannized against them. وَآتَيْنَاهُ, and we gave him min al-kunuz, in the form of treasures, wealth, مَا إِنَّ مَفَاتِحَهُ, whose keys were so huge, massive, heavy, لَتَنُوهُ بِالْعُصْبَةِ أُولِي الْقُوَّةِ, that there used to be a group of strong men that were needed to pick the key, leading to his treasures. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ لَا تَفْرَحْ. It is on one of those occasions when some people from his nation said to him, look here, don't show off, don't be arrogant. Inna Allah la yuhibbul farihin. God doesn't like those people who show off and who are pleased with their wealth the way you are exulting. وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ. and seek the goodness of the next life through what Allah has given you. Allah has given you wealth. The right, the right way to utilize your wealth is to seek Allah's pleasure and a good next life. Wala tansa nasibaka fit dunya. But don't forget your share in this life. As I said earlier, you've got to be balanced. Don't make your life miserable. You've got every right to enjoy your life within decent limits. Wa ahsin, and be good to others. Kama ahsan Allahu ilayk. That's the spirit. The way Allah has been good to you. And Allah has given you a good life. He wants you, therefore, to be good to others. Wala tabghil fasada fil ard, and don't seek mischief, corruption on earth. If you're not going to spend on others, it is going to lead to mischief, corruption in the world. Because people are going to be starved, they're going to be deprived. And, people are going to hate the rich people. It's going to be a tense society where the needs of some people are not being met and there are others who are living luxurious lives. Inna Allah la yuhibbul mufsideen. Allah doesn't love those who are mischief mongers. Now, this was his reply. This was the reply of the man. Allah, he said, Innama utituhu ala ilmin indi. What do you mean? I have been given this because of the knowledge that I have. It's my knowledge, it's my planning, it's my hard work that has given me this wealth. These people, they're idiots. They had a fair chance as well. They tried, they failed. You see, that's the mentality that gets into you if you don't understand the scheme of the Almighty. You idiot, you got it because Allah provided you with the opportunity. He allowed you to do things which turned out to be successful only because the Almighty opened the doors for you. But there are people who don't realize. So he made this statement, and a lot could have been said about it, but the Almighty responded by saying something which is probably the most relevant thing to say. أَوَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَهْلَكَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنَ الْقُرُونِ. Did he not know that Allah destroyed before him many people, many nations, man huwa ashaddu minhu quwwatan, stronger than him, wa aktharu jama, and much more wealthier than him. Wala yusalu an zunubihimul mujrimun, and those who are mujrim, who are criminals, on the day of judgment, they are not going to be questioned about anything. They're just going to be punished because their behavior itself would be good enough for them to be shown most clearly that they deserve punishment. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم.